So I've been posting content for about 6 to 7 months now, pun not intended, and I never actually got the time to discuss my backstory or who I actually am, and I wanted to use this time to actually talk to you guys about it. And I wanted to talk to you about how I almost got kicked out of college and basically almost flunking out. And I wanted to share this story with everybody who feels like they were in a dark place, or they feel super lost, or they feel like they have nowhere else to go. Trust me, guys, this video is for you, and be sure to stay tuned until the end. So back when I was I just finished my freshman year of college, I finished with a .7 GPA and was on the verge of getting kicked out of school. And yes, you heard me correctly 100%. I didn't have a 2.7 GPA, 1.7 GPA, point .7. I was down bad. Like, even me looking back at it, like having a 0.7 GPA, that is, how does someone get down to that level? It is absolutely absurd. But yeah, there I was, literally with a 0.7 GPA. Now you guys might be asking, how did I get there? Because usually people, even when they do bad in classes, they don't do that bad. It was largely a mixture of, number one, not being around the right people, being way too obsessed with the gym, and still having a bunch of senioritis carrying over from senior year of high school onwards to freshman year that never really went away. And combining all three of that makes an environment where you're basically just doomed to fail. And combining all of that essentially led me to having D's and F's in all my classes for my freshman year. And with all of that, it really put my confidence in myself at an all-time low, and I genuinely felt that there was no way out of my situation. And as for the gym, it's very, very good to keep yourself healthy and obviously get stronger physically, but when you become way too obsessed with it, and I see a lot of this happening, especially with my fellow young men out there, when you become way too obsessed with the gym, you tend to neglect literally all other aspects of your life. And when you're pretty much in a down bad situation like that, the gym should be the least of your concerns at the moment. Like, yeah, oh yeah, you can bench 315 pounds, but yeah, you're failing all of your classes, so what good is that gonna do for you? But I always believed that things would get better. So back when I was in high school, I wrestled, and while I was never a really good wrestler, there were two key quotes that I definitely remembered. With the last one I'm going to tell you is the one that really impacted me the most. And there were these two quotes by Dan Gable. And of course, the first one is, once you wrestled, everything else in life is easy. But the second quote that really stood out to me was, not all who have wrestled with great skill, but all have wrestled with great pride. And I still feel that that one specifically has the most amount of impact on me, because it's not necessarily the skills that you bring into life. Like, you're not going to be double legging all of your problems or doing a gator roll on basically your day-to-day tasks, but the life lessons of always finding a way to win no matter what the cost or what happens is what always sticks with you, whether it's on the mat or off the mat. And that's what I think still sticks with me to this day. And what happened was, what I guess got me out of this situation was, like, I realized that, okay, I gotta get my classes together. But during that time when I thought that I needed to start getting myself back on track, I ran into this guy named Nate from my gym at the Queens College gym. Shout out to Queens College, guys. Now, this Nate guy ended up inviting me to join his cybersecurity case study team. Well, more like telling me to join, because his reasoning was, look, Moses, your grades are shit. You have nothing else to do. You might as well join my team. And to be fair, he needed that one extra body on his team just so he can make the qualifications to join the competition. And I thought to myself, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I'm willing to try new things, and let's do it. And keep in mind, I had no cybersecurity experience at all. So at least for me, I was essentially going in blind. But me, Nate, and my team, we all worked very hard on that case study, and we ended up placing fourth out of a competition of 16 different teams from 16 different schools. So honestly, for someone with no cybersecurity experience, we didn't do too bad. And for those who are wondering, the cybersecurity case study experience was largely about zero trust models and ransomware attacks on a certain company, and we had to basically give a solution to the company of how to recover from that said cyber attack, which was a ransomware attack in this hypothetical scenario for the case study. But this whole event made me motivated to actually do well in school and get my life on track. And I ended up declaring computer science as my major. And I got my GPA from zero point 0.7 to 2.7 at the time. And honestly, I mean, 2.7 is still pretty shit, but it's still a fairest jump from zero point 0.7, I will say. And then a few months later, I ended up landing my first ever cybersecurity internship at IBM, and I ended up, well, technically I did stay at IBM, but then I ended up joining Kyndryl, which was the IBM company spinoff from what used to be IBM's Global Business Services. And that was my story of how I basically broke into tech. And keep in mind with the Nate guy from earlier, because he's going to be important later in the story. And now, back when I was in college, I was very, very involved in a lot of the extracurricular activities. I was involved in student government and my school's cybersecurity club, and I always really liked managing their social media pages. And sometime in about 2025, that same Nate guy who I mentioned earlier, he ended up blowing up on TikTok and Instagram and became what people know as Miami Promoter Nate. And he got viral for talking about a story about telling about how his girlfriend cheated on him with a club promoter, and then he ended up getting laid off from his job in finance, and he basically got all of his savings, moved to Miami, and began a brand new career pivot as a club promoter. And I was someone who always loved creating content, but I was always a bit too nervous to make content for myself. I loved making content and managing other people's social media pages. I've done stuff for college clubs, political campaigns, and I really enjoyed it, but I've never actually done anything for myself in terms of content. And then when I saw Nate do it, and keep in mind, Nate was posting content for many years and has went viral in a few other niches before he became the Miami Promoter Nate and was hanging out with Clavicular and the Nelk Boys. But he was making content and went viral in a few other niches for quite a while, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to start making content for me. And especially when you see someone that you knew, especially in college, go viral, it's kind of like that whole mentality of, oh, if he can do it, then I can do it too. So on January 3rd, 2026, I started making Instagram Reels. And a lot of those Instagram Reels were largely about cybersecurity and politics, and also I made a lot of Queens College reels too, which I thought was funny, and making the Queens College, I think it was people called it the Queens College propaganda reels. I always thought those ones were funny, and don't worry guys, I'm gonna be making more of those when school starts again pretty soon. I mean, right now it's August 20th as of this recording, so the school should be starting back up in a couple of weeks for people, and overall, I was just having a fun time making Instagram Reels, just yapping and talking about my favorite things, especially cybersecurity and politics, which were stuff that I was really, really interesting. I was actually involved in, and still am involved politically, especially on the local level here in Queens, New York, which actually led me to starting this podcast. I was on an Uber home when a professor of mine called me, and funny enough, it was former councilman Jimmy Vacca who sent me a call. And he said, hey, Moses, you should start a podcast. And as someone who does love listening to podcasts like The Diary of a CEO, Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, I never really thought of myself as someone who would be a podcast host. And I said, oh, Professor, why do you think I should start doing a podcast? And then he said, oh, you love to yap and post stuff on social media all the time, so you might as well start a podcast. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm someone who does like trying new things, and I had no podcasting experience. I wasn't someone who at least I thought was super good at interviews, but I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot, and let's film 10 episodes first. As of this recording right now, 6 episodes have already came out, and about 4 episodes are already pre-recorded, so we just finished recording 10 episodes, so I'm pretty happy of that milestone right now. And I definitely learned a lot about being a better podcast host and interviewing people. But essentially, yes, I started making this podcast with no podcasting experience at all. And he said, you know what? I will be your first guest. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. I will have a former New York City councilman as my first guest on my podcast. I think that's something that most people don't necessarily have handed to them, literally right that or have that opportunity. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make a new podcast and let's go shoot it and see what happens. And I realized that, you know what, I sat in a very interesting lane. Like, that was both in the New York City tech ecosystem as well as the New York City political ecosystem. I thought that was something that most people didn't really cross bridges into, and that was something that I felt that I had that kind of made me unique in a way. And when I saw artificial intelligence and cybersecurity being a lot more of a national issue for a lot of people, especially with data centers, AI, cyber attacks, and all that kind of stuff, I realized, at least in my opinion, that all of this was going to get more and more political. So I thought to myself, you know what, why not I just make this podcast and have it be something that bridges both worlds together? Because politics and tech kind of run everything and essentially guide how we live our day-to-day lives. So that's why I ended up starting the podcast Systems and Power, and shout out to Professor Jimmy Vaca for getting me the idea to start that podcast. And we're going to keep on shooting episodes every week, Monday, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to keep on watching, and I hope you all enjoy. But honestly, this whole story reminds me again about coming from a 0.7 GPA and then almost getting kicked out of college, but then you end up finding a way to not get kicked out, and you always find a way to win. And one thing I really want to stress to everybody, and I hope if there's one thing that anyone can take away from this video, it's that I don't want to give the whole generic never give up lesson, but whenever things are not going your way and you feel like everything is over, that you're in a box and that there's no way out, still find a way to win at all costs. Always think of new ways to keep moving forward, because if there's one thing that no one can really take away from you, it's the power of persistence. And the power of persistence is genuinely something that I always held very dear to myself, because I knew that having, and also just find ways outside the box to make sure that you're always moving forward and always find different ways to win. And that's the main lesson I really hope that everyone can take away from from my story. I really do hope you all enjoyed listening to that, and I hope the lessons that I learned through my experiences you guys can use as well in your everyday life. And please make sure to stay in tune. We have weekly podcast episodes again at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday, and be sure to stay in tune for more. Have a great day, everyone.